So I want to begin with an admissions overview, but before I do that, I also want to introduce two special guests that we have with us. First, Scott Buckout is here. Hi, Scott. And Scott is one of our current students who's also an alumna of the Fellows Initiative. So he's offered his time to just share a little bit about his experience here at Gordon-Conwell. And so we're grateful to have Scott with us. And also Mackenzie Cochran is here. Hi, Mackenzie.
Hi.
Mackenzie is also a current student in our Mako program, and she's also offered to share a little bit. So we're really glad that Scott and Mackenzie could be here. So just briefly, a little bit about Gordon-Conwell, if you're not super familiar with who we are, and then I'm going to turn it over to Scott and Mackenzie for them to share. Gordon-Conwell was founded in 1969 as an evangelical seminary on the East Coast of the U.S. that would stand up for the truth of God's Word, thoughtfully engage culture, and help people prepare for a lifetime of ministry, no matter what their calling might be. So today we're one of the largest evangelical seminaries in the U.S. We have about 2,000 students across 4 campuses, and our main campus, which the 3 of us are a part of, is here in Hamilton, Massachusetts, which is about 45 minutes north of Boston. It's located on what's called the North Shore, which is a beautiful area right by the water. And we have a variety of different master's programs. Our Master's of Divinity is our flagship degree and our most common. That's the preferred degree for people who want to go into pastoral ministry. But we also have a significant number of 2-year MA degrees, Masters of Arts, and there's a whole bunch of them, which I can show you later on our website. And those are good for people who want to pursue maybe a vocation in academics as a PhD, or they want to become a missionary or serve in a parachurch organization. There's lots of different options. The third main kind of category of degree that we often grant is our Mako, Masters of Arts in Counseling degree. This is a really unique program that maybe Mackenzie can share a little bit about later. And the Mako, at its best, is trying to combine the best of what's available in clinical psychology and counseling with a firm theological foundation. And so for people who want to go through the process of being certified and licensed as a clinical counselor, they're able to do that in all 50 states with some coaching from our team. But the Mako is also good for people who just want to have that foundation in counseling from a theological standpoint. So that's all I'll say about the Mako. We do have online options as well. That was one of the main questions that people asked in the lead up to our webinar. As of today, at our Hamilton campus, we have 1 fully online degree, the Masters of Arts in Christian Studies, which we can talk more about later. Additionally to that, we have all of our degrees are able to be completed up to 50% online, with the exception of the Mako. That's about 30%. But all the rest could be started online if that's something that you'd be interested in. We have a variety of different scholarship opportunities that are available, but the main one that I wanted to mention before we turn it over to Scott and Mackenzie is starting this fall 2019, we're doing a brand new 40% tuition discount to all staff and graduates of the Fellows Initiative. So hopefully that comes as a blessing to you as you think about what your next steps might be. And we would love to have conversations about how Gordon-Conwell could fit into equipping you for ministry, whether it's you relocating here and being a full-time Hamilton student or starting your degree online while you continue to pursue ministry. We have a lot of options, and regardless of which format you would choose, we are offering that 40% tuition discount to you. So that's just a brief overview of who we are. So I'm going to go ahead at this time and turn it over to Scott. And just as a reminder, Scott, what I would love for you to share with our listeners is, number 1, where are you from? Number 2, how and why did you choose Gordon-Conwell, and how did the Fellows Initiative fit into that? Number 3, what are you currently studying, and where are you at in your process? And then finally, what are your vocational goals and your sense of calling after seminary? So take it away, Scott.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Carl. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Yeah, my name's Scott Buckout. I'm a Master of Divinity student in my 3rd year here at Gordon-Conwell. I'm originally from Northern Kentucky, which is the part right across from Cincinnati, Ohio, which means I'm a long-suffering Bengals and Reds fan, and I'm not going to change. And so I came to DC right after college. I went to Davidson College in North Carolina, and I had studied political science in college, but also been actively involved in a lot of different student ministries. And I was actively kind of trying to figure out, all right, am I going to do this politics thing? Am I going to go into ministry? I would alternate each summer in college with my jobs. I'd have one job where I'd work at a church, another job where I'd work for as an intern on Capitol Hill. And so there was some real wrestling. A friend of mine who was at Davidson and a year older than me, she recommended that I come and visit the fellows program. I did that. So then I stayed in DC for 9 years. And while I was there, I worked in politics and kind of saw that through its end, and was realizing that there was still something else that I think God had called me to, and was trying to discern that. But I had gotten to a point where I no longer just wanted just to go to explore. I had done a lot of exploring. I had had the experience like the fellows program. And so I went through a discernment process with my church, which was Restoration Anglican Church, which some of you might know because it's a plant of the Falls Church. I don't know if there's specifically Falls Church fellows here. But yeah, it was in that process that a group of people came around and said, hey, we think that seminary could be for you, particularly ordained ministry. And so it was helpful to have kind of a goal or a purpose for why I came here. So I applied to a bunch of different schools. Honestly, this one made it the most financially possible. And I had also had a number of friends and pastors who had gone through it. And so, and I really liked who they were and who they'd become as a result of going to seminary and going to Gordon-Conwell. I think that was important too. I was looking at a lot of schools that were also kind of prestigious divinity schools. And just given my educational background and some of my work experiences, I think I was really looking for help being rooted and trained as a pastor. And so Gordon-Conwell is really known for that, especially pastoral care and preaching the word. And those two things were pretty high on my list and valuable. Hi, TFC fellow person who just issued something into the chat. But yes, so since I've been here, yeah, I'm finishing up my Master's of Divinity. I'm Restoration is an Anglican church, and so I've been going through the Anglican ordination process, and I'll likely be looking for an associate pastor role within an Anglican church after I graduate.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that. And we'll have a chance later. Oh, look at that Heart of the City fellow. We got a little rivalry going on, or I don't know, spirit.
Nothing like a good Anglican rivalry.
Yeah, shout out. That's awesome. So we'll do a little more Q&A in a second with you. But that was perfect. And now I want to hand it over to Mackenzie. And Mackenzie, can you answer the same 4 questions? Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my name's Mackenzie Cochran. I'm originally from Hilton Head, South Carolina. I grew up there, and then I went to college at Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina. So I graduated from there in 2008, got a double degree in history and Spanish, and then didn't really know what I wanted to do after school, which is a common fellows experience. So I applied and got accepted to the Falls Church Anglican Fellows Program. So I did that right after I graduated from 2008 to 2009. And I also lived in DC for a couple of years after. So my husband was a fellow with me. We dated, later on and got married, but we actually met at the Falls Church Anglican. But yeah, I worked, I had interned on the Hill as a fellow, and then I had worked in the nonprofit sector, specifically in international micro enterprise development. And then we actually moved from DC in 2014 up to Maine for my husband to go to school. And I would say for me, just thinking about how the fellows program really helped me get to where I am now, I would say it was pretty integral. We did vocational profiling with Art Lindsley, one of our professors. And one of the things that came up in our conversation was he had asked me if I had ever considered counseling. So I was right out of school. I was 22, and I kind of laughed at him and was like, sure. Like I thought to myself, I'm the one that needs counseling. Like I can't be a counselor. And so I feel like in some ways that conversation when I was a fellow was a slow burn. And so, I worked, like I said, in the DC area, and then I worked when we lived in Maine in a school setting. And it was something that I thought about, and I was really drawn to the work of counseling because of my own experience in counseling. And so I would say, I began to kind of wrestle with and begin to ask, like, is this something for me when I was living in Maine? And so I began to look at schools. Gordon-Conwell, similar to Scott, it just had a really wonderful reputation when I, having been at the Falls Church Anglican for several years. I mean, many of the pastors there were taught here and studied here at Gordon-Conwell. I'm in the counseling program. I didn't know as many people here, or I didn't know as many people that were graduates of the counseling program here, but I was definitely drawn to Gordon-Conwell because of its reputation. I would also say, I would second what Scott said in terms of scholarships. Certainly compared to other schools that I applied to, Gordon-Conwell made it possible for me to come to school because of the scholarships that they provided me and the aid that they could offer. So that was a huge pull. And then specific to the counseling program, Gordon-Conwell the MACO program would really set me up to become licensed in any state I wanted to. And that was huge. So, I mean, we can go into, if there's anybody on here that wants to know more about that, but it really I would get all the classes that I need to be able to get licensed in any state. And that was a huge pull for me. I'm in my third year in the MACO program. It's interesting. I was reflecting before this call. I had my son a year and a half into school here. And so I would say one of the things that I really value about Gordon-Conwell now is the ability to go to school full-time or part-time. There are other classmates of mine who are working full-time and taking maybe one class a semester. I was a full-time student and then had to pull back to a part-time student after I had my son. And I think the flexibility that Gordon-Conwell offers is another thing that I'm really grateful for now on this end. In terms of my plans, vocational plans, our family's planning on moving back to Virginia, and I plan to become a licensed professional counselor in the state of Virginia. And because of Gordon-Conwell's program, their MACO program, I'm going to be able to really easily go through the licensing process there. So that's about it. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Mackenzie. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Just to underscore a little bit about the MACO program, there was one specific question that did come through that I want to make sure to mention. Somebody had a question about distance learning opportunities with MACO specifically. And my understanding is currently in the MACO program, you might be able to do some of the core requirements from a distance on SimLink, which is our online platform. And that's maybe 8 classes, give or take. But the rest of the courses would need to be completed here residentially. So you have some flexibility to begin working towards your MACO and maybe shave off as much as a year, at least a semester, but then you would need to relocate to finish the MACO here. So I did want to just mention that since that was one of the questions that came through. And then with regards to the scholarships, and you can tell from both Scott and Mackenzie's story, that was a big part of their ability to come to seminary. And we know that that's a big factor for people. Additionally to the 40% tuition discount, which we are offering, the timing would have to be really quick, but if you were interested in fall 2019 for starting as a full-time residential student, we do have a lot of merit-based scholarships that you could apply for. And this year in particular, we've actually increased both the number of scholarships and the award amounts quite a bit. So you still have time. You don't have to necessarily be accepted by February 15th, but we would need all of your application documents and your series of short answer responses by February 15th if you wanted to apply for fall 2019. So I just did want to underscore that scholarship deadline as well, because I didn't want to forget that. So great. We're at a kind of a bit of a juncture here. I have a few questions that are kind of pre-programmed that I want to try to ask Scott and Mackenzie to weigh in on. But I would also be happy to jump into some Q&A early. If anybody has any questions that they want to either put into the chat or if you want to, enable your video and wave at me and you can share it, whatever you prefer. We really wanted to do this for you and to get your questions answered. So feel free to start doing that now in the chat. One of the questions that's just kind of an easy one, but what are some of the classes or the professors that you've taken here, and either one of you can weigh in on this, that you've really enjoyed and been edified by, and you feel like you've really benefited from?
Mackenzie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can go first. Yeah, Karl let us know, or gave us a heads up that we might be answering this question, so I had time to think about it a little bit. But yeah, I would say not really specific to the counseling program. I mean, specific to it's not a core counseling class, but we're required to take a survey of church history class. And I really, really loved that. I think the professor, Dr. Adams, she's pretty incredible and just comes to class always and so well prepared. And I think for me, getting to understand, the history of the church and having just a deeper appreciation for the sacrifices that, the saints before us have made to stand for truth, I think for me was really, really meaningful, especially just given my history major background. And then I would say too, one of the counseling classes that I really loved was a group process class. And so it was a class that taught by Dr. Polishuk, who was actually one of the co-founders of the Mako program almost 30 years ago. He's an incredible theologian and pastor and psychologist. And he teaches this class on group process. And it's awesome because counseling students are in there, MDiv students are in there, and it basically teaches you how to lead a group. And we actually had, group, the class itself was 15 people and we were divided into 3 different groups. And I think that was a really meaningful experience, being in a group with other people from the MDiv program or Mako program or MAR. But I don't know, I love that there's the interactive piece there within the counseling program, like the group process or the clinical counseling skills, where you're actually learning clinical skills that you'll need, for counseling in the future. So those are some of my favorites. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mackenzie.
Similar to Mackenzie, actually, and we should also not bury the lead. Mackenzie, Brent, your husband was my roommate when you guys started dating. So we actually have known each other for quite a while.
Yeah.
So once a fellow, always a fellow. It kind of follows you around.
Nice.
But my favorite class was also both the church history classes that I've taken, and precisely because of what Mackenzie said about Dr. Adams coming really prepared to lecture. She has themes. She's really thought about the ways that things that happen in history continue to play out or affect us today. But also she tells it like a narrative. And so you can see God's hand throughout the entirety of church history, but also ways that you picked up things along the way that you didn't even know where you got them from. That being said, I've also really liked, and this is going to be a surprising answer to if you ever come here and take an MDiv class, but I really like New Testament interpretation, which is the training class for how you get to do exegesis work, which is a really funny word about like biblical interpretation work. But I had a professor who was really great about helping us connect like the academic scholarship and the language work that you have to do as part of the MDiv into making it something that's pastoral, that can be treated and cared for people when you preach it or when you apply it to your church ministry. And so people who are able to, in general, professors who've been able to translate it for us, so that like the things that you've learned in the background that become useful and practical have been really helpful. So there's been a transforming leadership class that's also been really great, and a class on racial reconciliation that was really helpful for me as well. So yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. That was a great answer. A couple more questions have come through that I'll just address briefly, and then I'll jump back in with Scott and Mackenzie. One is about how many credit hours does the Masters of Arts in Counseling program consist of? I just looked it up. It's 87 credit hours, and it's usually completed in 3 years of full-time study. So if you were doing it full-time, it would take you that 3 years, and if you were doing it at a slower pace, it would take you a little bit In terms of how the program compares with other Masters of Arts in Counseling in a more traditional setting, there's actually not very many schools. I think Gordon-Conwell is one of maybe 4 or 5 schools that offer a Masters of Arts in Counseling, but from within the context of a seminary or divinity school that are also clinical programs. There's a lot of just clinical programs at secular universities that you could do. And then most Christian schools, seminaries, and graduate programs offer biblical counseling. And that's not to say that that doesn't have value, because it definitely does. But it doesn't have the clinical component to it. And Gordon-Conwell is one of, I think, only 4 seminaries and divinity schools in the US that's coming from an explicitly Christian perspective, but also has a program that's fully clinical. It's KCREP accredited, if anybody's like real into the, well, almost, I think they're in the process, but it will be by fall 2019, be KCREP accredited. They're going through that, which is a really big deal in helping people to get licensed and having your license being recognized. So that's just a little bit more about the MACO in particular.
Carl, can I jump in?
Yeah, please. You probably know a lot more than I do. So.
Well, Elise's question, no, you were answering Elise's question just about the difference between MACO, at a seminary and then, other programs at like a secular university. And yeah, I agree. I think the length of it, typically at another university, it might be about 2 years long, and the program here is 3 years long. But what I will say too, that's really awesome about Gordon-Conwell, the Hamilton campus, the Master of Arts in Counseling, is that a lot of my peers will go on to work in a hospital setting or an outpatient clinic. But then other people will, get hired on staff by a church, and maybe they don't want to get licensed. So what I, kind of seconding what Carl was saying, what I really love about the MACO program is that it's not a Christian counseling degree. So you really can take it, you're getting the theological and the biblical training along with the, psychotherapy training, but you're able to use it in, a hospital setting, or you're able to use it in a faith-based counseling setting. And so I think it gives you a lot of flexibility too. Like, you don't always have to go the licensing route either. You could, get hired on staff at a church. And I know this hasn't come up yet, but a lot of people will tend to do a dual degree with the MDiv and the MACO. So people will graduate because as pastors, they really want the clinical training. Maybe they're not going to become licensed counselors, but they're going to be doing pastoral care and pastoral counseling. So I think what I love about it is there's just a lot of flexibility there in what you do with it afterwards. It doesn't pigeonhole you, if that makes sense.
Definitely. And the dual degree is a really unique program and something we really believe in. But even if you just are a full-on MDiv student, there's some classes in the MACO department that you can still take as electives to kind of bolster your counseling repertoire and your experience in training. So there's really a real spectrum of ways that you can be equipped here at Gordon-Conwell. So Mackenzie, thanks for weighing in on that. I appreciate it. I think it'd be helpful. I'm going to try to screen share here for a second, and I just want to show you our degree programs page. So let me just see if I can get this pulled up here for a second. Okay. Great. Sorry, I was a little disjointed. But if you go on our website under Future Students, and then degree programs here, you can see a full list. 1 second while this loads. We have a lot of degrees across all 4 of our campuses. Some of the programs, like the Masters of Divinity, is offered at all 4 of our campuses. Some of the programs are unique just to our Hamilton campus. So it really just depends what you feel like your long-term sense of calling is and your interests. The Masters of Divinity is a 3-year program, and almost all of our MAs are 2-year programs. And then we also have the counseling program, which we've talked a fair amount about. That would be a 3-year program. And just to show you, as you start to consider and discern, what might be a good fit for you, you can click in on these degrees and click the link. And then if you click into Hamilton and scroll down, on every degree, there's a degree requirements link. And if you click that, you can see the MACO one's fairly robust and gives you a great overview of the entire program. But then when you get down into the actual degree requirements, you can see the specific classes that you would be taking. So I just think that's a helpful resource for you as you start to consider how Gordon-Conwell might be able to fit with your long-term sense of calling and the training that you'd like to pursue. So spend some time on our website, and if you have any questions about the various programs, I know there's a lot of options, we'd be happy to schedule a follow-up phone call with you or a meeting with our admissions representative. So I just wanted to show everybody that. Another question that I wanted to have for Mackenzie and Scott, I think one of the things that also makes Gordon-Conwell really unique is a lot of seminaries and divinity schools have gone away from having as much of a residential focus. I mean, there's some schools that don't even have housing on campus at all. And even for people who don't live on campus here at Gordon-Conwell, I think there's still a lot of programs to be a part of, groups, student associations, and so on. So I'd love if either of you would just kind of speak into what your community life experience has been here at Gordon-Conwell and how you feel like that maybe has added to your overall experience.
Mackenzie, you or me?
How about you go? Do you want to go first this time?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I think for me, I knew that, sorry, I'm going to occasionally cough because I'm getting over a cold, but I knew for me that this would be a dramatic career shift. And so part of what I was trying to do in going to seminary was not just get the degree credits, but also walk through the process of spiritual formation that I would need to do this type of ministry. And I could have done it, I guess, by taking classes at night and continuing to work. Financially, that certainly would have been a lot easier and made a lot more sense. But I think the value that I've gotten from doing full-time on-campus residential study has been that I'm kind of in the water of people who are going to be doing the same kind of work. And it allows me to participate in programs like the Pierce Center for Discipleship Making, which gives me opportunities to have a spiritual director or to do different spiritual disciplines, like going on silent retreats and being a part of spiritual formation groups. But these are things that would have been much harder for me to have be kind of incorporated in my theological training while I was here if I had done this like remotely or online. And so I think that's been the primary thing that's been really helpful for me. It's hard, like there's some hard parts too. It's hard to give up living in a house to live in a dorm room, but there's value too in like having a community that will help form and shape you for a season to prepare you for something else.
Definitely, that was very well said. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, I would say, so my family, we live on campus and we've lived in the community apartments all 3 years that I've been here. We had friends that had been, here at seminary before and, they had recommended it to us. And I think it's been a really wonderful place to find community. And so, yeah, I really value being able to live on campus. And I think what is really unique about Gordon-Conwell is the amount of apartments and housing that they provide to students. I think, Karl, you can probably correct me on this, but I think there's like 6 apartment buildings and then there's dorms up the hill. And then there's, Retreat House and Pilgrim as well, which are another, housing alternatives. But I don't know. I love that, when I walk down the hill, I see kids playing on the playground, and I love that I can take my son to the playground, and see other moms and dads who are students or, working full time, at home or out of the house. And so I really loved feeling connected. And I think it just has made it easier for me to study, just to even live on campus, to be able to walk up the hill 5 minutes and go to the library. And I would say too, I would second what Scott said. I did, the Pierce program for the first 1.5 years that I was here. And, that was really wonderful to have as part of just creating some spiritual disciplines in my life and creating a rule of life. But yeah, I mean, I highly recommend, living on campus. And, obviously people that come here, there's a lot of different churches in the area, and that's where people also find community. But I definitely, it's a cheaper option for sure. And I would say that Gordon-Conwell offers a lot of different options, a lot more than other divinity schools or seminaries offer. So yeah.
Definitely. And one of the things that struck me when I first moved out here a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, it's just a beautiful campus too. And we would love to have you come take a visit to experience that, if that would be helpful to you. We're on the tallest hill in the area. We're on about 80 acres. I mean, it's just most of the year it's green, trees, very fresh. We're about 10 minutes from the water. If you would like to come visit our campus, you're able to schedule just a general visit most of the year, and we can provide transportation to and from the airport, as well as provide 2 nights of housing and all of your meals while you're here to come visit. We also have open house events that happen twice a year that we call Explore Seminary. And the next one that's coming up is going to be March 5th and 6th, which is a Tuesday and a Wednesday. So the same things would apply for Explore Seminary. We could give you transportation to and from the airport and provide up to 3 nights of housing and your meals while you're here. So the registration is still open for that. And if those dates work for anyone and you'd like to take a trip up here, we would love to have you. We put a lot of energy into the open house event, and it would be a great chance for you to sit in on classes and to get to experience some of that community life for yourself. So I did want to just mention that. There's one more question in the chat that we haven't addressed yet, which I think will be brief. We're getting closer to wrapping up, so if anybody has any questions that haven't been addressed yet, really anything about the financial aid scholarship side, the academic piece, we would be happy to try to address those. The question specifically about the Mako, we do have obviously the Mako here at Hamilton. Our Hume campus, which is the Center for Urban Ministry downtown in Boston, has a Mako program. And then down in Charlotte, they have a Master's of Arts in Christian Counseling. One of the main questions we get is, why is Charlotte Christian Counseling and Hamilton and Boston just counseling? And the reason is there's different laws in North Carolina and Massachusetts about how you have to name certain degrees. And so the laws in North Carolina stipulate it has to be a Christian counseling degree, and in Massachusetts it has to just be a counseling. But the curriculum at both of the programs is very similar. We do, I think, have a little bit more resources here, more tenured faculty here at our Hamilton campus, and this is where the Mako program really got started. So we do really try to promote the Mako experience here. But if relocating is not an option for you, or if that would be a better fit, I mean, we also have a lot of students at the North Carolina campus as well. And so it just kind of depends on what would be a good fit for you. So we'd be happy to have that conversation offline as well if you're trying to make some of those decisions. But the curriculum at all 3 is very similar. So that was a good question. Another question that I wanted to pose to Scott and Mackenzie as we move closer is, let me preface it by saying, a lot of people, it's real fashionable nowadays for people to go to graduate school, and I think there's value in that. But at Gordon-Conwell, we're more than just an academic institution that's granting graduate school degrees that you can put on your resume to go get a better job. I mean, we firmly believe that our students who are here are part of a learning, living community of faith. And so our professors have a keen interest, not just in helping you to grow academically and challenging you in your intellect, but also helping you grow in your faith and having spiritual formation be at the center in many ways of what we do. And so there's a lot of things that play into that. We have chapel twice a week that our community can participate in. The Pierce program is a great program that has a focus on spiritual formation. But that was a long-winded preface to say, Mackenzie and Scott, could you speak a little bit just to how Gordon-Conwell has helped to shape you, challenge you, and nourish you in your walk with the Lord?
Do you want me to go first, Scott?
Yeah, let's just keep trading back and forth.
Okay, you want me to go? Yeah, I mean, I would say Gordon-Conwell, I mean, it's been pretty amazing to have a really safe space to have difficult conversations and to have, you know, I think especially in the counseling classes, you know, the question of how do you really integrate your faith, you know, with counseling work? What does that look like? What does it look like to, you know, work in a secular setting and not be able to talk about your faith, but still bring the presence of Jesus with you, you know? So I don't know, I've been really, really blessed by just incredible professors who are just faith-filled people, clinicians and professors and teachers, who, you know, it's been a really safe place to kind of wrestle with and grapple with what does it look like to integrate my faith and theology with, you know, counseling work. And, you know, I kind of mentioned this earlier. I think the Pierce program has definitely really blessed me to just the fact that Gordon-Conwell really values a program like the Pierce program, that Gordon-Conwell doesn't want to just hand out degrees, like Karl said, but is really invested in and cares about the spiritual formation of its students. You know, it's no surprise, graduate school is difficult and hard, and a lot of people who are in school are working part-time or full-time and have a lot of other responsibilities. And so I think, you know, Gordon-Conwell has put a huge focus on spiritual formation and on caring for the souls of its students. And I think that has been really impactful. And I just am amazed and blessed by my professors' faith and the way that it comes across in their lectures and in my time, you know, in the classroom with them. The care that they have shown me, the flexibility, you know, that they've offered me. I'm meeting with a professor tomorrow. I'm doing a directed study with her because I needed to get a class before I graduated, and just all of the ways that, you know, the professors have blessed me and have been willing to just give above and beyond because they really care about me and they believe that I've been called to this. So I would say those are some of the ways that Gordon-Conwell has blessed me just spiritually. Yeah.
Thanks, Mackenzie.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what Mackenzie said. I think there's two kind of phrases that have stuck out since I've been here. The first is something that you'll probably hear at orientation, which is you can get all A's here and still fail at seminary. And this idea that we aren't just here to learn the things that they offer in classes, but part of ministry is being formed and shaped by God through the Holy Spirit to be the person that he most wants you to be the person that he's called you to. And so that's been really helpful for me to think about. It has deprioritized some assignments at different points for other things, which doesn't go well with like my former academic viewpoints. I'd say the other thing that has been particularly powerful and profound for me was shared in a Transforming Leadership class, which is that the degree to which you are healed or pursuing healing as a leader will be the degree to which you can help others find healing themselves. And so I think this has been a unique season for me to continue a lot of good disciplines and practices that were in place before I came here, but only maybe in a way to intensify or kind of fully develop them as my own.
Oh, you still there, Scott? Uh-oh.
Like a lot of the groups about what's going on in my soul, and that has been really, really helpful for me. And so, yeah, I think those are some of the things that I've taken away.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was a great insight. I appreciate it. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you to everyone who's taken the time to join us tonight for this webinar. I think there's a lot more that could be said, but this is the beginning of a conversation and a discernment process. And I want you to know that we in the admissions office, our team, would love to start that conversation with you. So feel free to reach out. You can reach us by sending us an email at admissions@gordonconwell.edu, and we would be happy to help or you can, find our phone number on the website and give us a call, and we'd be happy to talk to you that way as well. And I think all of us, Scott, Mackenzie, and myself, have been significantly impacted by our experience here at Gordon-Conwell. And so we would love to see many of you, whether it's part-time or online, or here residentially, get to participate in what Gordon-Conwell has to offer. So any closing words, Scott or Mackenzie, before we sign off?
I'd just add, Karl, if you have the email addresses for people that signed up for this, I'm happy to share my contact information if people want to particularly reach out with any questions, especially as it might relate to being a fellow and considering stuff like this. I'd be happy to be available for any follow-up.
Thanks, Scott. That's great. We'll include that in the follow-up email.
Yeah, same here. If there's specific questions about the Mako program too, I'm happy to answer those for any of you that are on the call as well, or if there's things that you think about tomorrow, a question you wish you would have asked, either directed at Karl or, I'd be happy to answer them if they're specific to Mako.
Definitely. And I actually am really glad you mentioned that, because in the follow-up email, we're also going to send a code for a application fee waiver. So rather than having to pay the $50 application fee, you can have that waived. And that's our way of saying thank you for joining us tonight at the webinar. So be looking out for that email. Thank you to everyone, and we appreciate the time, and we wish you the very best. So let us know how we can help you, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you.